nomination. When I was a kid, I was a long-distance runner.
You would be 83 at the end of your second term.
But, thank goodness. Let's not be ageist here.
I'm not.
I am Larry David. And you didn't get it.
I have an uphill climb, and I'm going to climb as high and hard as I can. And I'm a progressive who likes to get things done. Before it was called Obamacare, it was called Hillary Care. I'm going to try to break the highest and hardest glass ceiling. I hope it splinters completely.
Do you still believe there's a vast right-wing conspiracy?
Don't you?
Trump is, as you know, a well-known scientist.
Just know what we're up against, because it's real, and we're going to beat it.
I want Trump to win the Republican nomination. And I would love the opportunity to run against him. The key foreign policy vote in modern American history was whether or not we should go into Iraq. No joy at all to say that much of what I feared would happen did in fact happen in terms of the destabilization of the region.
Can you assure me that as president you would not expand our military involvement abroad?
No, I can't, Michael. Military force must always be a last resort, not a first choice.
She's a neocon, that's why she can't. All right, and that is some highlights from yesterday's Democratic town hall. The actual debate is going to be tonight, and then there's a Republican debate on Saturday night. This is Francesco Abbruzzino. This is the Uncensored Report, one-man operation. Me, myself, and I do everything from the production to the research to the posting on the social media sites to the website, everything. If you see it posted, it came from these lovely fingers. This show is unedited and unscripted. Basically, I go over some stories that I like. I pull up some documents so I have the facts in front of me, and we cover it. I always start off covering just the local news. That's on my Scoop National News page. And then I got the dog again. Then I opine on other stuff. So let me go ahead and get us over to the right screen so that I can start this. All right, HIV doctor who injected Charles Sheen says that the blood claims he claims that goat milk helped cure the virus and rid Charlie Sheen of HIV. Interesting story there. I don't know if it's true. I know he's making that claim. U.S. is running out of space to store oil, of course. There's too much supply, not enough demand out there. And this story just essentially covers that perspective of it. And Army Dad, this is great what technology does enable us to do. Army Dad watched the birth of his quadruplets from half a world away. He was about 6,500 miles away in the military. And he was able to watch it as you can see there, nurse holding it up, and he sees the birth of his child. Tragic story here, a bakery. I used to be a baker for 2 years at Publix, and this guy was dragged into the industrial mix machine, and he's a 45-year-old grocery store employee from Utah, dragged in and died, and they shut down the bakery. This is the Democrat Bernie Sanders, and this is just interesting. I will expand it real quick. Somebody fainted last night during his news conference, so let's take a quick watch and listen. And let's click play. That always works. Hopefully the guy's okay, but you know what? Every time I look at Bernie Sanders, I think Larry David. One and the same. The way they talk, the way they express themselves, everything. This is city council that's forced themselves to, instead of staying their usual group player, they decided just to do a silence, and that's an attempt to block a satanic group from conducting their meetings of open invocation. So let's take a quick listen.
Is now fighting a satanic group through silent prayer. The City Council has approved a new measure asking members to pray to themselves before a meeting instead of holding a group prayer. This in order to block a satanic group from opening the meeting with a prayer later this month.
All right,
the
there you
Phoenix
go.
City Council is now fighting.
Let's go ahead and stop that. And next we got. This is just interesting. You can look and decide. Obama, essentially, they said, hid a Jesus, the symbolism at a Catholic university, but allowed Allah up there. they insisted on having that symbol there hidden at Georgetown. But when he went to the mosque yesterday, he had no problem showing the Islamic Society's emblem up there. And, look, I've said it over and over. It's not bad that he went to this mosque. I think he needs to go to mosque. I've gone to mosque, you go to temples and everything just to explore the other religions out there. The problem is just the extremists that are in charge at this mosque is the primary issue. And then he does stuff like this. Now, I get it. He probably wants that symbol behind him to illustrate, hey, we're America and we're behind the Muslim religion here in America. I get that. But when you put it up against something like this, where you got the Catholic one that's hidden, and the whole war on Christianity, it makes you wonder. Let's see. Black Lives Matter activists. This was interesting. This young man, Rod Wheeler, says that it may be trouble because the guy said he's only consulted with Hillary and Bernie Sanders, and the Democrats have run Baltimore for 20 years, just like Chicago, and they have brought the societal problems of Baltimore onto themselves, and maybe he should be talking to a Republican. And he's also concerned that a lot of his ideology will be coming from what he hears with Black Lives Matter. So let's take a quick listen.
Let me tell you something. If you're getting into politics, you're off on the wrong foot if you're going to start off talking to Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. That has been the problem, guys, with all of these cities. Look at Ferguson. Look at New York City with de Blasio. Until we get a different perspective in there, a Republican perspective, we won't see it.
All right, and there you go. Next, we had news. This is actually interesting. It's Karl Rove, who is not a Trump fan. I can tell you that. I don't think he'll be voting for Trump. But he talks about the whole Trumper tantrum and how he believes that Cruz's misleading tactics, from the voter card, which looked very official, to telling all the evangelicals, hey, Carson's out, you need to vote for me because I'm the other evangelical, those tactics may have cost Donald Trump the victory. So let's take a listen.
About this, said we were sending it to our team, leaving the implication, I suspect to most viewers, that this had to do with sending it out to the staff members. No. They sent this to their nearly 1,500 precinct captains. There are 1,500 precincts in the state, and they sent this message from Spence Roberts to those precinct captains. Why does that matter? Well, the gap between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz is 6,239 votes. There are 1,500 precincts. Do the math. If this message caused precinct captains in the precincts to tell the Carson people, your guy's getting out, he's having a big announcement later this week, caucus with us, if that cost Carson 4 votes per precinct to switch to Cruz, then Cruz beats Trump. If he doesn't switch 4, then he loses.
All right, and it's very interesting, and I got to tell you, Karl Rove is a statistician. I'm not a huge fan of him, but he knows his numbers, and Cruz can sit there and make fun of Trump all he wants and call it the Trump tantrum, which I thought was hilarious, but the fact remains is that his tactics, his misleading tactics, not only harmed Ben Carson, but they harmed Donald Trump. And I gotta say, I must agree with Donald Trump that his results from Iowa should be thrown out, or they should have another vote cast. And I gotta tell you, this tarnishes Ted Cruz significantly in my eyes. This was just interesting. A bike rider. Watch this guy. Hopefully the guy was all right. Boom. Wow. All right, Italy preps for Muslim invasion. They're locking down the shore and basically got a naval flotilla there. Snap, you're going to see about 1 million people start to lose them. They're saying because the economy is doing so much better that they now are putting in timeline constraints or imposing them upon the SNAP program. So many people will start to lose their benefits, and we just saw it occur here in Florida. Clinton's emails, this was just a correction someone put out, that the emails that are on there, the 22 that are so top secret you can't see them, that they did not disclose CIA officer names. Rather, they indirectly referenced undercover CIA officers. Either way you look at it, not a good thing. 5-year-old dead after strangling on monkey bars at school. That's a travesty. I don't know how the heck that happened. God, that's tragic. All right. What do we got here? This was just funny. Jeb Bush, he went out, he said something that he expected applause and nobody applauded, so he's like, okay, can you guys applaud?
Prepared to act
Here it is in a second.
security interests of this country to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
This was just a travesty. This is out of China. CCTV is out of China. Watch, not this motorcycle. In a second, right here, another motorcycle. Boom! The guy ended up surviving miraculously. Yeah, it looked like he hit the car. This was just about a Muslim, they call it the little Muslim raps at a public school, walk out on the national anthem. Somebody said, oh, this wasn't in America. Why are you putting it up there? Hey, I do international news, fools. Close call. Asteroid could pass Earth by 11,000 miles. That's 95% closer than the moon. Interesting story out there. People are faking pet services and their status with them to get them on the plane with them. There's a lady with a pig. Man bites into a piece of KFC chicken and he discovers a whole lung. Disgusting. All right, this just strange and weird. Paramedics will weigh a dead old man with a prostitute still attached to his genitalia. Okay, some stories out there. Dog escapes cage to comfort puppies during the night in the kennel. This is a pit bull, flower power. Just so you know, a lot of these, what I post on these pages are basically these fluff pieces that I call them fluff, like that pit bull. They get a ton of likes and shares, and you can basically, an algorithm in my head will put it up there, assuming that it's going to get large numbers because based upon the amount of time it was on the other posting thread, the amount of likes, the amount of shares, I'm assuming that it's going to be a thread that many will want to read, and that's how they end up on this wall. Some of them do. Like this one is 2279, 3 shares, so it's engaging up there. This was a heavily read thread out there. Not sure why, but it was. Celebrities that have Muslim names. In the name of culture, what are we doing to our children? Putting so much pressure on them to succeed. Earth is actually 2 planets, according to a study, not just 1. What do we got here? Brown University, in the name of social. God, I can't think of the word I'm thinking of. Social justice, cultural war. They went in and they got rid of Columbus Day, but that wasn't good enough, so they called it Indigenous People Day. 500 pounds of pot found in a truck outside of Walmart. 10,000 immigrants in Berlin getting luxury hotels while the homeless German residents and citizens get the shelters. Hillary's Clinton aide Cheryl Mills refused to speak to the State Department Inspector General. I can't say I blame her. Got above the law there, but I wouldn't speak either. Congress is outraged over hepatitis C treatment for the VA because the VA reps can't afford it. Only 141 people are interested in that. Not sure why there's no interest in a story like that. This poor young girl, that's a 13-year-old who supposedly met this 18-year-old on social media, and he ended up killing her with his accomplice, which have both been arrested. This is a wild jaguar that's roaming the mountains over by Tucson, Arizona. Trump's plane diverted due to engine trouble. We already saw that, and mother reunited with daughter after 82 years. Cop at a shelter. Man arrested in murder of a 2-year-old daughter and her mother. Another travesty there. Some good fluff stories here. Marine vet with concealed carry permit saves a deputy's life. Good story there. Julian Assange. The UN basically said he shouldn't have been arrested, but the UK says if he leaves that embassy, he will get arrested. And that's essentially all the news stories out there. Kansas man accused of car bomb plot. Plot thickens. And so now we can go into my stuff that I like to opine about and get rid of a lot of this fluff that's out there. Wanted to talk about a couple things today. What I'm going to try to talk about is the caucuses and a lot of the unknowns with the presidential primary process and the candidates out there. Then I'm going to try to get into talking a little bit about the cashless society and some moves that we just saw over in Europe, in Germany. Lastly, if I still have time, I'm going to try to get on the campaign. There's a nationwide campaign right now to get rid of the education department and some of the initiatives that they are throwing down, where people feel like local presence, local officials, local school boards can essentially do better than having this national criteria like Common Core. So let's go ahead and get to the Iowa caucuses, and what they've shown us is a few important things out there. And one of the things they showed us, basically by the votes going with Ted Cruz, Trump, or Bernie Sanders, is that they hate establishment. Now I know Bernie didn't win, but he lost only by 0.2, which was marginal, a couple people. Also, they showed us that the polls don't really have a clue as to how the primary is going to work in Iowa. I think it'll be better in Vermont. The whole caucus thing is different. You got about 2 hours. You go in there, and the whole process is a little bit different. I always thought that when these posters are out there, they would have some kind of algorithm that they would ask a person, what's the probability of you going in and voting? Is it 1 to 10? If they said 5, they'd plug that in there, and that algorithm would take that into consideration. But based upon the articles and the news I saw last night, they don't have that, or they do, and it's not that great. So Ted Cruz went out. He won the Iowa caucus. We all know about the issues there and a lot of his mischievous ways that put him ahead of Donald Trump and possibly damaged Ben Carson in the process. And what they're saying is that the GOP, that they're saying that by electing Ted Cruz or Ted Cruz winning, that A, they're not for the GOP establishment. Nobody's for them. And B, that ethanol is not as big of an issue as it was, because he's against ethanol, which provides, I think it was 135,000 jobs in Iowa. And so basically that was the Cruz appeal. And so people are saying maybe people are looking at it differently than what the establishment believes. What does it all mean? I don't know. Is Trump morally wounded? I doubt that, and he seems more aggressive than ever before. Cruz, is he clearly the person that's going to get nominated? I don't think so. I don't know about that. I think he looks bad with the two shenanigans that he pulled in Iowa. And then there's Rubio. He's a growing person. He's the establishment person. I think they said immediately after the win, he got about $2 million in his coffers. He's the guy, him and Jeb Bush, that the establishment Republicans want in there. So they're going to New Hampshire. There's 23 delegates there up for grabs that people can get. The polls, which should be better here, are indicating that Trump should take it by large margins, and Sanders should take his by large margins. What we need to look at, the two states have... They've outsized importance because they represent two completely different constituencies within this whole process, this whole primary process. And any candidate who doesn't win one or two states is highly unlikely to win the presidency, based upon the previous numbers in the past 40 years. Only Clinton has lost both and still moved in the White House. He's the only one that's done that, so it's a low probability. With Cruz winning Iowa, Trump's going to New Hampshire, he's probably going to take that. It's going to make it difficult for anybody else to get into that race and win, unless they go to this caucus, unless they go to the National Convention and they don't have a majority, and the establishment basically will pick the candidate that they want for the party. So Trump needs to win New Hampshire. We know that. He needs to win either South Carolina or Nevada, which is looking good, and that'll validate how good he's been doing in the polls, and that he can get his Trump supporters out there. I don't know if Iowa's loss was surprising. I don't know if it put a dent in his invincibility. I don't know if I'm buying that a lot of people are out there saying. In regards to Cruz, he'll have to consolidate, with his win, because he spent a lot of money, did a lot of footwork in Iowa, not in the rest of the country. Whereas Trump's focus has been primarily the whole country. With a win in Carolina or Nevada, he'll be better positioned for the SEC primaries that are coming up. Rubio needs at least the top 3 for the next few races, and he needs to do well in the SEC. If he doesn't do that, there may be issues. But all in all, I mean, they've basically, the Iowa caucus turned out pretty much the way they predicted it would. You know, Ted Cruz beat Donald Trump and Marco Rubio. There's a heavy evangelical vote there. On the Democratic side, you have Clinton. She just barely squeaked it out from Sanders. Like I said, it was razor thin, 0.2. There were some glitches, some reporting problems, some mischievous ways out there. But the current mainstream media is out there, and their wisdom opines that the real intramural fighting is occurring solely in the precincts of the GOP, that you're not seeing any of it in the Democratic Party. Saying it's only in the GOP where you see big party donors, that they're horrified about the ascension of Cruz and of Trump. Trump, he's a genuine outsider there because he's never held the office. Cruz is deemed an outsider because many of his Senate colleagues just despise the guy. They hate him. And so what they're out there doing is major media is basically trumpeting the establishment guy, Rubio. If you went out there, the praise was all about Rubio. It wasn't about Cruz winning. It wasn't about Donald Trump losing. It was building up the establishment candidate, Mark Rubio. And it doesn't matter. You have one, if you look at these parties, Democrat and Republican, you got one party supposed to be a party of big government, Democrats. The other party, Republicans, small government. When big government is in power, the government gets bigger. And when small government is in power, guess what? The government still gets bigger because they're one and the same. One party's supposed to be for social liberalism. The other one's for social conservatism. But when socially liberal party is in power, the country gets more and more and more liberal. When the socially conservative party is in power, guess what? We tend to get more liberal too. On foreign policy, you got one that's supposed to be like hawks, the other is supposed to be doves. America loses wars, and when the hawks are in power, America loses wars a lot of times. So it comes as no surprise that the GOP base, that they despise. They despise all. The base that despises all is hardly in the mood to be lectured by the establishment out there and the direction the establishment wants to go to, or by mainstream media for that matter, and their misguided preference for the establishment people, the status quo mongers, the ruling classes of the different GOP and the Democrats out there. An indictment or not, Hillary, she's out there and she's in real trouble. In November, they revealed Clinton signed a non-disclosure NDA back in 2009. She agreed to protect classified information, which obviously she hasn't done. She's failed to do that, and it may or may not result in criminal prosecution, depending upon what the Justice Department does, which is taking direction from Obama. Senior lawmakers indicate that Clinton's personal server contained 22 emails that were very top secret. They call it SAP, Special Access Programs. And this came as a revelation that the email contained on government's wholly self-contained classified system, which they call this CyberNet, that it somehow jumped from there over to Hillary's private server, home server. How did it get there? And, now we know that Clinton's emails contain the names, possibly referred to names indirectly of CIA officers and foreign assets on the CIA payroll. And so she, no matter how you slice it, she is in problem. And in a nation where rule of law is paramount, such blinding incompetence, such outright criminal behavior, such as this, cannot go on. You have to act upon it. Clinton must be indicted. But like I said, under Obama, it may not happen. She's She's a former Secretary of State. She's got a lot of power. She knows a lot of people. And an indictment does not seem for certain. But this SAP thing, that's a game changer, folks. You got to remember that. It's undeniably clear that the results of this FBI investigation will lead to a couple things here. One of two things. Hillary's bid for the White House or the legitimacy of the FBI. Which one's more important? If they decide not to prosecute, the legitimacy of the FBI is at stake. If they decide to prosecute, Hillary's bid for the White House is at stake. You know, and this FBI director, Comey, a lot of people say he's got a lot of integrity. They basically said if the Justice Department doesn't act, that many of these guys are going to quit. They're going to come out with the full facts so that everybody knows what took place. But, you know, luckily, and that may be the course that we go down, because Hillary's got, I think they said 4 Democrat women that are real loyal, and they can't see an indictment coming from them. And they all serve at the whim of the Obama. Same with the FBI director. I'm thinking his integrity, though, will not have him do what Obama dictates. He can fire any of them, just like Richard Nixon was able to fire his special prosecutor and like 3 other people during the whole Watergate thing. So he has that ability, and he can hang that over their head. And so the whole indictment thing would be Clinton's worst scenario. But as I said, much of the Democratic base is already soured on Clinton without this indictment. As we saw with Bernie again, 0.2 in Iowa. I don't know if the indictment's going to be even needed. And what it's doing is leaving the whole establishment Democrats in a hell hole. They don't know where to turn. You know, do they go with the self-avowed socialist Bernie Sanders? I mean, he's great to listen to. I like watching him. He reminds me of Larry David. But I don't know if they want him to be the standard bearer there. And then you have O'Malley. He backed out of the race. So what, does Biden jump up there? Is he some kind of suddenly a genuine possibility that get out there and take on the Republican machine? I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be time or the capabilities to do that. Seems almost certain, though, that there's going to be a lot of fireworks, folks. These races are exploding, both on the Republican and on the Democratic side. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, what the turn of events bring to us. So tonight, you had the debate. I'll bring the highlights tomorrow of the Democratic debate. It's the first one-on-one debate, so it should be interesting. And I don't know if Bernie will become more of an attack dog or what, but the real interesting debate is going to be Saturday with the Republicans, because you're going to have Ted Cruz on there and Trump and Carson. And I forget which channel is sponsoring it, but if it's CNN or someone, they're going to try to make it a feisty debate. So pay attention to it. I did want to talk about the war on cash. You had some capital controls coming in yesterday in Germany. So the war on cash continues. And if you ever wanted to live in a world where bankers hold all the power, not just our money, but all the power, then you have something to look forward to, because it's possibly right around the corner. In the future, we may have to keep our cash secret. We may have to hide it. We may have to stash it. And in the future, they'll have plenty of new gadgets and technology to play around with. They'll have the digital revolution where they can bring about, it'll enable them to bring about new plans to control our cash control. And it won't be for free. With the going trend, cash is about being a thing of the past. It's gone. It's a part. It's the underground transactions that take place. If you have cash, you're money laundering. You're a criminal. You know, they want us all to be part of a digital system. And by its very nature, digital systems are in place to track every purchase made. Every secret you have out there using the money. You only be able to make payments through authorization, through your credit card, debit card, purchase card. It can be frozen. It can be hacked. They can control you. Withdrawing more than $5,000 or $10,000 will be banned. I know when I go to the bank before I moved to Italy like 8 years ago, I could go in, get $10,000, $20,000. Now, if I go in and I want more than $3,000, I got to call in advance so they can get it. It's being monitored. Capital controls. And some of them are harsh. I just said Germany's enacting capital controls there. And in the end, what's happening is the bankers are attempting to force everyone into a system with this trendiness thing of digital platforms. Look how neat the digital platform is. You should do this. It makes life so much easier. And what it's going to be is cash will soon garner the same looks as someone with their kids out in public and the kids crying and screaming like crazy. When you use a crash, you're crazy. Because cash is liquid, private, and it's a readily desirable currency. The banks want it limited. The government wants it limited. And they want it destroyed. They want it to be illegal. And we can't allow this to happen, folks. This is what we're calling the war on cash. And like any ambush out there, it has come to many as a surprise. You know, you get out there, you hear a central banker talking or a politician talking. They say something won't happen. You can almost guarantee it's going to happen. It's going to happen, folks. No, of course, doesn't mean no. No means it could happen tomorrow. And you have to believe nothing that these officials put out. It's all about deception. It's deception that has a purpose. With both politicians and these bankers, these central bankers. And you'll see it time and time again. You know, look back in 2015, Greece government, they spent 2 weeks saying they would not impose capital controls. Then one Sunday morning, the Greek finance ministry repeated the denial. Next thing you know, hours later, they imposed capital controls. Next thing you know, people cannot get their money. Next thing you know, when the smoke finally clears, they're able to get 60 cents back on every dollar. Last week it happened again. You saw it over in Japan. The Japanese central bank said they had no plans whatsoever to adopt negative interest rates. Then last Friday, the government went and introduced, for the first time ever, negative interest rates. But it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. And what the negative interest rates do is they make it harder for a lender to literally pay the borrower, that's us, borrowing money from the bank, for the privilege of lending him any money, him or her. And negative rates could not exist in a free market. And that's why we're not a free market, folks. They can only exist in a fantasy land, fantasy island. In this fantasy world that's created and kept up by central bankers. And producing more than you consume, producing more than you save, is the basis of prosperity. Negative interest rates destroy the impetus to save, folks. And that's why it's a huge threat to financial prosperity. It's a disease that's spreading around the world. And it's not just over in Europe, over in Japan, Asia. It could happen here. The Federal Reserve has discussed using negative interest rates here in the United States. So has the Bank of Canada. And it's well known that this infection may be imminent, because once officials start denying it, that's when you got to sit there and say, oh, shoot, we're in trouble. And you may be wondering, well, how does this impact me? How is this war on cash is negative interest? How is negative interest rates a war on cash? When you go to the bank, you deposit money. You're lending money to the bank, basically, by doing that deposit. In return, you generally want some interest. Lately, it's been hardly anything. That doesn't happen with negative rates. Instead, you're paying the bank to keep your money there safe, and it's not safe. I don't want to hear about FIC insurance. Then, because it's almost bankrupt with all the banks that have gone down, that you don't hear about too much about it. Then they take that money that you're loaning them, and you're paying them to give them the loan and loan it out to others and make money off that. But if you don't like that plan, the only other alternative is to stash it under your mattress. which in many cases is a practical manner because it limits how far government, how far the central bankers can take their negative interest rates. The more it costs to store money at the bank, the less inclined people are to do it, the less inclined they are to save. And central bankers don't want you to withdraw the money from the bank. This is the big reason why they're trying to incrementally eliminate cash. And that's why we saw over in Sweden. The closest thing to the world's first cashless society is there, and they have the negative interest rates. If you can't withdraw your money as cash, you have two choices here. You can deal with the negative interest rate and pay the bank for allowing you to spend money that should be yours, or you can go out and spend the money. Or I guess there's a third one, you could shove it under your mattress. And that's how central planners essentially work. And that's how they want it. Using negative interest rates as a mechanism in the war on cash to force you to spend money, go in debt, and stimulate the economy. With this whole negative interest rate, this whole war on cash, what it's leading to is desperation by the big bankers. What it's leading to is giving these groups, these bankers, even more power, too much power. And it could be incredibly dangerous down the road. But if you listen to mainstream media, they give endless praises to the central bankers about how great they are. Portrays them as selfless, benign bureaucrats trying to save the economy. Wake up, folks. It's not that way. They're destroying the economy. The Federal Reserve is destroying the economy. The value of our dollar has dropped significantly. I should have put on here. Oh, man, I should have put on here. I got it on my page. Maybe I'll play it at the end. It's a 3-minute video about the Federal Reserve and the impact it's had on our cash. But I want everyone to be aware of that. You gotta remember this stuff, this war on cash. It's not some big conspiracy thing. It's a real thing where they're out there coming after the cash to get more control of the people of society. And we can't allow it, folks. We gotta stand tall. Unfortunately, we won't. There's only a few of us that are active out there trying to stop a lot of the tyranny that we're seeing coming out here. And I say this all the time. I'll go on my wall. I'll put down TPP. God, the impacts of TPP on a person are unimaginable, how they're going to impact us as a society, but nobody cares. I'll get 230 people reached on that. But I'll put a stupid guy falling over on his bike, he'll get 30,000. Then we'll still have everyone complain about it. Yesterday, Venice Library. And I don't even think I've expressed this locally. They've been saying for months, our local library here on the island is got mold problems. I first heard about it watching a city council meeting. I know city council's known about it for about a year. First thing I think is mold. God, we got to get people out of there. We got to get it fixed. We got to get it taken care of. Nothing like that was ever discussed. Then suddenly the county came in, like it seemed like about a year, and said we got to close it down. It's just not healthy. The city acts like all the city politicians, we're blindsided by this. What do you mean? They've been telling you for a year there's mold in there. You guys have been discussing it. How long do you want these people to work there? How long do you want your residents to go there and get potentially sick? So, the whole society's up in arms. I got a local page, the Minute Scoop. It has about 27,000 people on there. It's got a heavy engagement, about 75%, 80%. So, a lot of people are active on there. And when it gets posted on there, it goes everywhere. And a lot of the news channels, everybody follows it. Police, city officials, everyone. So it goes on there. People get on. They're upset. They didn't know it was going to close down, and they're voicing concern. So they have a meeting yesterday, the Sarasota County government. And I didn't go to it, but I saw some newsreels on it. And basically, it looks like a handful of people showed up there. They were outraged. They wore shirts about saving Venice Library. But it's only a handful that are going to get it done. Just like this last election cycle. Only a handful, I think like 500 people determined the next city council member for a city of 22,000? Yet you would have thought that there would have been 30,000 people showing up at the elections the way they were on Facebook complaining. The key is trying to figure out how to get these people that are on Facebook complaining, not happy with the system, not happy with the cashless society, not happy with TPP, to get out there and act, to do something about it. That's the difficulty we're having. And politicians know that, and they take advantage of it. But the same goes with this next subject I want to talk about. I want to talk about the national campaign which has been launched to abolish the U.S. Department of Education. Same thing here. They're trying to get people active and get them out to do something. They're trying to illustrate to people that the unconstitutional federal education mandates that are being imposed on states, being imposed through using bribes or bludgeoning from D.C., that it's hurting America. So you got a group of parents out there, and they started this grassroots education activist process. And they're trying to launch it throughout America to shut down the Department of Education. They want to shut down once and for all. And the mission's called Stop Fed Ed. Stop Fed Ed. And I think there's a hashtag for that too, folks. And what it is it's in the crosshairs is everything from dumbed down standards, such as Obamacare, or not Obamacare. Oh, that is a dumb standard, but Common Core. I'm sorry, Common Core. The article that brought all this to my attention basically brought up that it was Obama Common Core, but it's not. I believe Republicans were on board with the Bush in that. Common Core, nationalized schooling, that needs to go. Associated federal testing regimes need to go. Studying for the test. Federal data gathering, federal mining. I don't like that. No privacy. We need to get rid of it. And all this is encouraged by the feds. And what this group hopes to do is to pressure Congress, pressure our politicians into abolishing the Department of Education. I think I've heard many Republicans on board. I'm not sure which ones precisely. But they want to essentially go out and remove the tentacles of federal government from our school system, from our kids. They want positive reforms. They want decisions to be made at the state and local level to improve education, not by some bureaucrat up in D.C. Makes sense, right? And the new national organization, U.S. Parents Involved in Education is the organization, they unveiled this Stop Fed Ed campaign. And they did it through a series of press conferences, primarily up in Iowa because a lot of politicians were up there. And then they also did it down in Texas. Okay? And basically they're asking, these parent activists are asking other activists across the country that are frustrated with state officials and federal officials, and they want you to get out there, and if you have issues with these federal mandates, with these politicians that are not acting to end Common Core or intrusive standardized testing, to stand up and take action against them. If you can't shut down the Department of Education, shut down the politician. And since the inception of the Department of Education, federal mandates have done nothing to improve education. To the contrary, one size fits all is basically the approach that they're using, and it's harming kids. It's stagnating advancement, achievements at the academic level. If I was listening to Trump yesterday, he was in Alabama, Arkansas, I can't remember, and I'll cover two things with this. He was in there and he was noting that education is very important. Common Core needs to go, which I like to hear from him. And he was touched on how schools went from number 28 to number 30, and we spend the most on schools. So we're spending more than all other nations, yet we're dropping. We dropped down to number 30 in terms of benefits that the kids are getting out of the educational process. So he's on board, and I like that. But one thing I want to note, and I'm going to get sidetracked here, there's a lot of fluff, no substance. What I want to hear is, it was great to hear, he sat there and said, vets, we're going to help vets. Vets are not going to have the problems they're having now. Great. I like to hear that. We're going to get rid of Common Core. Oh, great. That's awesome. But how are you going to do it? Look at the vets. There's so much bureaucracy there. That's the stranglehold. I saw an interview with the guy that took over there. He said, there's so much bureaucratic bullcrap here, I can't do anything. We just saw two people that were demoted get their jobs back, basically paid the same amount of money. And so it's great that Donald wants to do that. And I'm glad he wants to do that. But I'm sure Ted Cruz wants to do a lot of this stuff. I'm sure Rubio wants to do this. But how are you going to do it? You're going to build a wall along Mexico. Great. How are you going to do it? I'm going to get Mexico to pay. Okay, great. How are you going to do that? How are you going to get all these communities to come together for the wall? How are you going to get Mexico to pay for the wall? How are you going to do it? There's no meat with those potatoes. And that's the one issue I have with Mr. Trump. But back to this Department of Education. What they need to do is stop treating our kids like rats in some social engineering program out there. We need to start treating them like kids again. Like kids. And one of the first steps is to close down this Department of Education. It was created, 36 years ago. Spent over $1 trillion, and our education has not improved. We're declining. How is it that we're spending the most on education and we're declining? Third world countries have better education than some of them. And so it's time to step up and just say, look, I'm on board with Donald. It's time to end this failed experiment. Return the control of our schools to the state and local levels. Start innovative competition out there. And we can succeed. American education can exceed, but we need to get rid of federal government and their micromanagement of our educational system. And end this practice of teaching to test versus going out there and learning the information. Stop this data mining. Bring back some privacy. Jesus Christ, folks. So while the federal government has no constitutional authority to meddle in education, D.C. has basically usurped control of it. They've usurped America's public education system. And despite the unconstitutional spending of huge amounts of taxpayer money out there, education outcomes continue to decline. So we got an unconstitutional department, unconstitutionally spending our money, bringing about education standards that are less than par. Just consider all the problems that it's wrought. I mean, my case is easy if you just look at all the samples that they have there. It's not that hard to buy into, folks. But something needs to be done. I don't know if anything will ever be done. I'm hoping. I wish these guys the best of luck out there. But it's going to be a huge uphill battle, especially when you listen to what I was just saying about getting things done at a local level. I just mentioned what was I just talking about? The library here in Venice. It's hard to get people to respond and act on the local level, county level, state level. And even with me, like a lot of times, I'm an independent. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. And when it drives me crazy when they're running their primaries here, they won't listen to me because I don't matter in the Republican race, which is primarily Republican where I live. Democrats got a couple people, but they never really get office. And the only reason they will listen to me, or the only reason some of the local politicians will come on my show, is because they know the mass audience I have. If it weren't for that, they could care less about what I have to say, unfortunately. And it's sad. One more thing I want to talk about. I did some rants on Zika. I think I did a rogue rant. I did find out after that, back in the 40s, the Rockford Foundation actually patented the Zika virus. I did not know that. I saw some documentation on that yesterday. But WHO has come out and they've declared essentially that this outbreak is a national emergency. We had Governor Scott Brown come out and say there's a national emergency in 4 counties due to the Zika virus. And the outbreaks of microcephalia throughout South America, Latin America, and the possible link between that and the Zika virus. And so it's turned into a global health emergency, which had them invoke a rarely used dictum, which is basically saying, hey, people, if you're pregnant or newborn, stay away from these countries. Margaret Chan came out. She's the director over there of the WHO, and she announced that a committee of experts are going to get together and try to see what the connection is between Zika and the microcephalia and what's happening. And since I've last talked about it, we had an individual actually that was transmitted sexually to another individual. It's 2 cases, the first one in America, I believe, and which is concerning to a lot of individuals. I think major media is hyping it up even more. I mean, Zika's been around since the 40s. It was mainly over in Africa and then moved to Latin America. Like I said in my rant, and some idiot blogger came on saying something about it, but it's pretty coincidental, and I think it needs to be looked at, the fact that GM mosquitoes were released at basically the same time as this explosion of the Zika virus in Brazil, the epicenter of this latest virus outbreak. And what worries me is the fact that they're planning on releasing GM mosquitoes here in Florida. Now, this was back in June. They said it was on hold, waiting for a report. I've been trying to research it and see if they've released it. I've gone to the mosquito management site. No updated information on there. Because, I think we have in Florida 7 cases of Zika. So they're out there. They want a global response. They want to minimize the threat, which is great. WHO's out there working that angle. Some people, I thought I saw a story too come back saying that the impact of the Zika virus isn't as significant as many people believe it is, that it's actually less likely to get it, and that people are over exaggerating that number. I don't know if that's true, but I have seen that report out there. Now, what I'm going to do is, I got you on a single screen here real quick. I'm going to go to my personal page, and I got this video, and I watched it yesterday. It's about 3 minutes long, and it basically covers the Federal Reserve, and it's pretty informative. It's pretty interesting. Like I said, 3 minutes long. Hopefully, it'll educate, inspire, and help change some of your views. So, what we're going to do is go there real quick. I had it pulled up. Okay, 1 second. And this is Joe Regan's site, Educate, Inspire, and Change. So let's get this going. Once I get it going, I'm going to convert you guys over now, and we'll be right back after you see this.
Let's say the United States needs money. Instead of issuing their own United States notes backed by their own credit, they issue treasury bonds. They then sell these bonds to the Federal Reserve, which buys them with money they created out of thin air. The money that the Fed created then goes to the U.S. The U.S. then pays interest on the money that the Fed lent to the Treasury. So to clarify, the Fed creates money from nothing, loans that money to the U.S., and then charges interest on that money. What this means is that there is never and will never be enough money in circulation or in existence to pay back that debt. We as a country, as well as private citizens, are forever enslaved by debt with no way of ever paying it off. Now, when the Federal Reserve buys bonds on Wall Street, the major financial firms that have been selected as dealers deposit the proceeds at their own banks. Fed rules require banks to keep 10% of their deposits in reserves, but the bank is free to issue loans equal to the remaining 90%. Let's say the Federal Reserve buys a $1,000 bond. After putting away 10% into their reserves, they are then able to loan out 90%, or $900. Since the original $1,000 is still on deposit, the $900 in loan proceeds is more new money created out of nothing. A total of $1,900 of new money is now available in the economy. Now, the person that took the $900 loan spends that money. The payee then deposits the $900 into their bank account, and once again, reserves and deposits increase. This process goes on until that original $1,000 bond, which was created from nothing, becomes $10,000, making this one full-fledged debt machine while also devaluing the dollar. The more money that is out in the economy, the more the value decreases. There's no wonder that since the implementation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, the dollar has lost over 95% of its value. The US dollar will eventually be destroyed due to an overwhelming financial crisis, and a globalist-run monetary authority will come along to save the day. And much like the Fed pretends that its goal is to prevent another Great Depression, the global currency will pledge to prevent another financial crisis, thus putting more power into the hands of a few and enslaving humanity that much more.
All right, and there you have it. And it was just give you interesting perspective of how it works. And look, the Federal Reserve is not a government entity. They don't even have to really. I think Greenspan was before the Congress once, and he said, "I don't have to answer any of your questions. I'm not accountable to any of you guys." Basically, it's a corporation ran by 6 foreign banks, basically, that control and define our currency, our money, our standards. It's ridiculous. All right. This has been the Uncensored Report. Go by my site, theuncensoredreport.com. Those are the news stories that I like without all this fluff that you see. And I do share them on the Scoop National News. And on there, you'll see some for longevity. Check them out for minerals and vitamins. That's the only thing I have on there to try to make a couple dollars to cover websites and all that crap. That's it. So visit my site. This has been Francesco Abbruzzino. Share these videos, folks. I need to build up my subscriber base on YouTube. Everybody have a great day.